Good evening. Welcome to the May 19th meeting of the Plymouth Township Zoning Hearing Board. Would everybody please rise? We do have a flag.
We do have.
With the Pledge of Allegiance. You guys up? All right. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So we do have brief bookkeeping. 200 Ridge Pike, which was a sign application, has been withdrawn. Do we need to do any formal action, or is that good enough?
That's good enough.
Okay. So the first matter on the agenda then is 305 Killybegs Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the application of W. Scott Winger, AIA, for, I believe it's Mr. and Mrs. Saracena?
Nailed it.
Yes, Saracena. Excellent. For a variance to permit the expansion of a current non-conforming use of the property whoops, I'm reading the wrong one. A variance for front yard setback as an existing non-conforming condition. Applicant seeks to erect an accessory structure proposed to align with the same non-conforming line of the existing house setback, which will require less impervious coverage. This property is located at 305 Killybegs Lane in the AA Residential Zoning District. And the applicant is here with the owner of the property. This hearing was originally opened on April 17th on the record and continued to tonight to allow the owner to appear to answer questions and make a presentation, and the owner is here. Why don't we have Mr. Saracena sworn in, please?
State your name, please, for the record. Spell.
Justin Saracena, Saracena.
Raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
And Mr. Winger, I guess Mr. Winger, if you're going
sworn in
to...
before, but-
Oh, you were sworn in before. Then you're still under oath in this matter.
Just state your full name for the record. Spell.
Scott Winger, W-I-N-G-E-R. Okay. Well, I appreciate
Tell
you
us what
reading that.
you're looking to do here.
Okay, so I appreciate you reading that off, and thank you for hearing us again this month. We're here before you to talk about the front yard setback on the AA residential zone property. We are compliant on the drawings in front of you relative to building coverage for both the accessory structure and the breezeway. We meet our impervious coverages, we meet the building coverage and the green yard setbacks set forth by the township. The property is a little bit unique. It's primarily a L-shaped property. The long leg of the L is where the driveway appears, coming off the cul-de-sac. Two properties are adjacent to the driveway. The short leg of the L is where the house, existing house sits. And as was noted, the existing house corner of the attached garage sits across the front yard setback by about 7.8 feet. Each of the adjacent properties form the front yard, I should say, to Justin's property. His front yard setback is established from the rear yard of the nearest adjacent property. We have studied this accessory structure in relationship to the vernacular of the farmhouse that exists. We looked at angles. We looked at studying the accessory structure further back. We got into view issues from the existing rear porch, and we were beginning to see that the further we set it back, the more impervious coverage we had relative to asphalt. We looked then at what the appropriate setback was, allowing for sort of the minimum car turning radiuses to allow the accessory structure to form the primary garage. The existing attached garage becomes more storage, perhaps some interior use as time goes on, and space for one vehicle. The accessory structure itself is proposed to be 2 stories. We are fitting under the height limit for the accessory structure in the AA zone section. And
Is it a 2-story garage?
it's a 2-story garage.
Okay, garage.
The upper level is an office area.
Okay.
I think there was a concern, would that ever be rented out? It's a private residence, and I don't believe there's any intent for rental use. It's really for Justin's own office space for his businesses. So I've combined with not wanting to encroach too far into the rear yard, blocking views, and being mindful of the amount of impervious coverage we were adding relative to blacktop. We and keeping in mind that we wanted the garage to align with the not so much the plane, but the orientation of the house, so that it presents itself, I think, strongly to the front. It enhances the aesthetic, and we think it continues to be a strong neighbor to the adjacent properties, with the small encroachment to get to the existing front yard setback that the existing house has. The measurements you see in front are to a roof overhang of the proposed accessory structure, which is where generally the front yard setback is measured to, if you will, or the building edge is measured to, excuse me. The actual vertical plane that roof overhang is supported by is about 3.5 feet back from that. So effectively, our vertical plane is about 4 feet or so encroaching into the front yard setback. Our measurement is in front of you to the roof overhang.
Okay, so that's basically, you've got a small little,
Yes. Not too, actually smaller encroachment than the existing house, but what we tried to do is, here's our 50-foot line, and here's the existing setback and our neighbor's property line.
right, but you still,
It's that little piece.
instead of pushing it back and, having it hit here, you want it up here so the lines.
So we're not getting too much of our views from the back porch block.
Right, but if you put it back, you could conceivably not need the variance.
Conceivably.
Right. All right.
We thought the understanding that the existing condition, non-compliant, had been acceptable. I don't believe we have any adverse comments from the neighbors.
I actually
To my knowledge.
spoke to every single neighbor that touches the property and went around and talked to each one of them, walked them out, showed them exactly what my plans were, and nobody had any issues.
Let me see if the board has any questions. Ms. Lettich?
So the existing garage,
Yes.
those garage doors will no longer be accessible, is that correct?
No, they will.
No, they will be.
Yeah, we're not, the accessory structure itself does not touch the existing building. There's a breezeway proposed that would link the two. So we can still use the existing garage, two-car garage. The doors roll up and you can drive in. And we can use the proposed accessory structure. May I show you?
Yes, because I thought the garage doors are on this side
They are.
of the house, so,
So here's the existing structure. One car, another car would sit right beside it, and they would drive into here. 4 feet. And so there's two doors here, here, and here.
Right.
So the two doors would remain, and then our proposed garage over here, so we have one car.
behind
Yes.
where the garage is.
Yes.
Oh, okay. There's an existing shed, will that remain?
This part here is.
No, we're planning on moving the shed.
You'll remove the shed. And will you have plumbing in the office area above?
Yes.
the driveway? And I feel like your neighbor on the right has a similar addition, it seems, on their,
On the right,
oh,
as
on
you
the right,
drive
the
in.
facing house, yeah.
right,
Yes,
if
yes,
you're facing the house,
yes.
it seems to have a similar.
Similar, yeah.
Position, yeah. Those are the only questions I have.
Mr. Daly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed that the public notice says that adding the accessory structure will require less impervious coverage, yet the chart seems to show a delta of plus 4 percentage points. So I'm just reading that.
I'm not familiar with that.
I think less impervious coverage than if we pushed it back, we would need more pavement.
Yeah, that's what I tried to say in the narrative is just that if we pushed it further back and become fully compliant, then we're putting more impervious coverage to drive to the front door.
Okay. Okay, so you're putting a minimal amount.
We're trying to put a minimal amount, be respectful of the aesthetic of the existing building, We felt through the design analysis that they should be parallel, because I think they present stronger, and mindful of the views in the back and back again to the impervious.
Okay, thanks. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Aprile.
So you're not building a garage, you're building an office.
Building a home office with a garage on the bottom, because we do need additional storage as well.
So
Yes.
if you didn't need the setback, you could do it. But to use it as a home office, you need a C of O for home, to operate a professional office out of it.
It's not a professional office, it's just I work from home, it's just for me to work in.
So there's no third parties coming to the office?
No, I don't have people that come to the house for work, it's just where I work from home. So I don't have to hear the kids running through the house all the time.
I was going to go there, but I wasn't sure.
Playing the piano on my conference
So
call.
do you need a bathroom for that? Do you need plumbing?
I'd
Convenience.
like it, yeah, so I don't have to.
Because then we'll probably have to restrict it so it's not a duplex or a mother-in-law suite or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean,
No residential use.
Beg your pardon?
No residential use.
As in overnight.
As in residential use, yeah.
Like a
As
fancy
in
house.
No separate cooking facilities and no bedroom facilities.
No bedroom facilities.
I mean like a couch, like
A couch
Yeah.
is okay. But
so.
it can't be designed as a residence.
So to code though, if we did push it back in the yard and take up more impervious coverage, everything else designed is to code, right? I mean, it's allowable to have.
Well, I don't know. Then you get into additional uses that may or may not be permitted. You're only allowed to have one principal use on a property. If you're building a separate, standalone structure that you may be proposing to have as a house or rent out or have people live there or have a kitchen installed and cook from there, that's going to be a problem for uses. So it wouldn't be up to code even if you pushed it back and you complied, you didn't need the relief that you're asking this board for, you might need other relief.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because a duplex, 2 units would not be permitted in a double A.
Well,
It's not intended to be a duplex.
Yeah,
It's a single-family accessory structure with an office.
Right, I just want to make,
Okay.
we just want to make it clear.
Storage on the
On the
lower level,
Yeah.
office use limited to the owner
Correct?
Yeah.
on the second floor.
Correct.
Yeah.
Period.
Interior vestibule, so you can go up steps to get to the second floor.
Okay.
Sorry, Tom.
That's okay, I just
No,
needed that
appreciate the
clarification, that's
clarification.
all.
Thank you.
No more questions.
Mr. Armando.
No, just answered all mine. Thank you.
That was just to make it clear, because conceivably, with the way that it's laid out, you could throw in a kitchen, next thing you know, you're renting it out, it's an Airbnb, and that's in violation of
Yeah.
the, first of all, it's
That's
a
not
violation of the
gonna
zoning
be
code.
big.
We want to make it clear that
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
what's going to
No,
happen.
Yeah, no.
That's,
No.
And you're also not running a business actively out of it, meaning, you know, UPS is showing up 3 times a day, dropping off stuff, and, you know, you're not seeing customers, and they're not parking here, and the next thing you know, your neighbors are mad at you
No.
because you're running an active business. It's one thing to have a home office, it's another thing to
Yeah.
put a little shingle up and have people showing up to whatever it is you do. So, anyway, those were the concerns, and the other question I think you addressed was that the neighbors are fine with this.
Yeah, they're all fine with it.
And I don't know if anybody's here, but anyway. All right, I have no further questions.
I was just going to ask, Mr. Chairman, if the board grants relief, would you be agreeable to conditions that state that the upper level would be limited to office use by the owner of the property only, that the lower level be limited to storage of household items, that there be no rental of the proposed garage, no commercial use of the proposed garage, and no residential use of the proposed garage, and that no kitchen be installed?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to put a kitchen. I was planning to put like a sink in there and a microwave and stuff, but we don't have to do that.
No residential living.
A kitchen, yeah, it can't be a separate living quarters.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm good about that.
Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak with respect to this application? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman, to grant a variance from Plymouth Township zoning ordinance number 342 as amended, Article 4, Section 402, point capital B, to allow a front yard setback as the existing non-conforming condition, and erect an accessory structure proposed to align with the same non-conforming line of the existing house setback, which will require less impervious coverage. At the property located at 305 Killybegs Lane in the AA residential zoning district. The upper level will be an office to be used only by the owner, lower level for storage only. No commercial use of the addition. Are there any other conditions I've?
No commercial use, no residential use, no rental, no
Right.
kitchen installation. I think you hit everything else.
Okay.
Okay, we have a second.
A second.
Okay, so what was Ledge?
In favor?
Mr. Daly?
In favor.
Mr. Aprile?
In favor.
Mr. Armando?
In favor.
The chair votes in favor. Good luck. It's a nice area.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Yeah, very nice property.
Case, I have to leave.
Yes. Chair is recusing himself for the next case.
Not so fast, Patty.
All right.
Wow. That's a new record. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for doing that, Mike.
Oh, that was legal.
Dave,
Oh, Dave.
you're going to be the chair?
Yes, Dave's going to be the chair.
Fun.
No township meeting, you all good? Right? Okay. What are you gonna do, get a new app number?
Yep.
One poll,
Thank you.
Okay, all right. All right, just wanted to make sure you got the phone. Don't be late. All right.
So whoever's trying to find the site, here, I'm just having to listen there. Who's the first witness?
Right, you left me a message.
Email the other day that
And then Mr. Cathy can sit next to you.
I'm number 2, but not
But you can sit over there because I know you have
Wow.
and Mr. right there.
Well, let's ask them about that.
In person.
right here, right?
He says one thing, and R is the same general character. That's R, that's what we had last time. We're going to ask him about
Okay.
where E comes.
You'll bring that up, I guess.
Yeah, I can ask him that off the cuff.
That's good, thank you.
I'll get with you before.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. There.
Just want a little bit late.
Nah,
What'd you do to your back?
Tying my shoes, man.
Ken,
Stand up.
you have a place to sit?
Every time I do it, redo it. Did it Thursday night.
Gave you the walk. You gotta stretch.
Uh-oh.
It's like the muscle.
Do you need that back?
Give you a present.
Mark?
We're gonna take it.
You guys fill it real quick.
Oh, we can do Nazareth. I don't think anybody knows.
We're going to take a short recess.
I have another box in the car. Something was wrong. It looked like the one I had the other night.
I hope not. Yes. Absolutely.
You're allowed to answer. Yeah, that's good.
It's your own person.
I know, this is weird and different.
We spent so much time together on this.
I know.
When you object, just make sure it's loud enough that I can hear it down here.
Got it.
Right, same for you.
He'll be doing
He's
the
gonna be talking,
objecting,
that'd be-
I'll whisper the objection.
There you go, right,
It's
exactly.
in there.
Yeah, no more texting it or, messaging across the screen.
No. This is a no objection hearing. I don't know if everybody got that memo.
I did not.
Yeah.
I object.
Actually,
No
you're not the one I'm worried about.
Going to be sweetness and
I'll say that in front of
What are the changes?
That's wrong, Matt. That's all I know.
What about that hotel, that office building? They give that the green light? It's all over some kind of
This isn't in the book.
I'm sorry that I thought I had it in the calendar. You probably did, and I think I just didn't realize. You defaulted the auditorium. Yeah. That doesn't, that's
Child daycare, radio station. I don't think that's it. I think it must be.
Yeah, actually, it's not mentioned. Ken, you want to come down here with us?
Any use of the same general
Thanks.
character is any of the above. I need to ask him about
Yeah,
this
good with you
because
guys. Good on the
application itself says 1,100 feet. And all the other thing is a, I don't know if that's what you need.
It might have been the more dangerous
I don't
option.
think that's a flaw. Brian,
Yeah.
if it's not 1100E, and if it's another section 1100, I think it's S now,
Okay.
which used to be R, but now it's S.
Okay.
Because they added in a new Q or whatever it is.
Okay.
That was me.
It's not a fatal flaw to the, it doesn't, it's,
Okay.
that's the general nature of the
Okay.
relief that's
Okay.
been
Okay.
advertised.
So it's different from what we have in the book then, huh? I guess has the book been updated?
Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to get an
Yeah,
updated book.
Appendix
because
B, that's my behind one.
They added a Q
Okay.
under there, which is the mid-rise and high-rise
Oh,
apartments,
okay.
which is new, and then what was R is now S, what's
Okay.
now, what was S is now T.
Okay.
When did they add the Q? 2023?
Not 2022, at the end of 2022.
What's it say?
Yeah, you're allowed to have mid-rise and high-rise. Yeah. Mid-rise apartments.
I did. So the building, on the plaza, that's it.
These guys, you have to, an existing building previously used for its use of being converted to mid-rise apartments or high-rise. If it's authorized.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, I know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's the amount that we limited to 150 units. Thank you, Mark. I hope so. This is Trumbowersville Borough. What is that?
You're lucky it doesn't say Northampton Farm,
really.
because that's a 500,000 square foot warehouse.
We do
Good,
zoning hearings
good.
at
We'll
8
take
tables.
this.
That's just a little longer than this one.
Okay.
Awkward thing, cross-examination.
What did you do with the, I had the traffic studies?
Right there.
Oh, okay. Oh, you got it.
Yeah.
Just give me one. All right, we'll get to it.
Not at all.
Ready? Okay, we'll call this hearing to order. This is the continued hearing of Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust, or also known as PREIT. This hearing was opened on the record on April 17th, 2023, and continued to this evening by agreement of the parties. We know that the parties are the applicant, represented by Mr. Kaplan. We also know that the township is present in opposition to this application, represented by Mr. Amuso and Mr. Keatley. Are there any other parties to this matter? Oh,
Mr. Heleniak, for the record.
Mr. Heleniak. See, you guys are confused. You guys are confusing me with the letters. I got something from Derek.
You got
today.
something from Derek, yeah.
Mr. Heleniak, apologies. Back on the record. Are there any other parties to this matter? Okay. Seeing none, we will proceed. This is the application, as I said, of Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust for property located at Germantown Pike and Hickory Road, commonly known as the Plymouth Meeting Mall. This is located in the shopping center district, the SC district, and it's a request for a special exception from section 1100E of the Plymouth Township zoning ordinance to permit the construction of a mid-rise apartment consisting of 4 to 5 stories with 300 residential units. My initial question, Mr. Kaplan, is 1100E
No, it's
correct?
S. It's S.
It's S. Any use of the same general character. So that's a typo.
Yeah. Did my application say E?
Yeah,
If it did,
yes.
I apologize.
Yes.
No, it's S.
Okay. So clarify that, and I know Mr. Daly on the zoning hearing board was speaking about that. The relief is from 1100S
Right, thanks.
of the zoning ordinance.
It's actually 1100R, but that is now 1100S.
I think you're right, Brian.
Well, R was the old one.
Yeah,
right.
they put the Q in there.
They put the Q in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so it's a special exception from section 1100S to allow a use of the same general character as any of the above permitted uses in this district when authorized as a special exception by the zoning hearing board, et cetera. Cap?
Good evening. I have a prepared statement I'm going to make. My name is Mark Kaplan. I represent PREIT, Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust, the applicant in tonight's hearing. The real estate that is the subject of tonight's hearing consists of multiple parcels which together form the Plymouth Meeting Mall. This includes approximately 71.1 acre parcel upon which the mall is located, and a 4.5 acre parcel abutting the south side of the Plymouth Meeting Mall. It contains a dilapidated 2-story office building that a long time ago served as the offices for IKEA, when IKEA was located on the Plymouth Meeting Mall property. Before we begin, there is some history to this property that I would like to address, and all of you were here for that, so bear with me. In September of 2020, PREIT filed an application with this board seeking approval of an 11-story, 503 dwelling unit apartment building. The application sought approval of the apartment as a special exception. The basis for that application was that Section 1100S permits as a special exception, quote, a use of the same general character as any permitted in the SC district. We believed then, and we continue to believe, that the proposed 11-story apartment building is of the same general character as a motel or motor court or an elderly housing assisted living facility, 2 uses permitted in the SC district. Following our public hearing spanning 10 nights from November 2020 to August of 21, the board denied the application. PREIT filed an appeal to the Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas, which affirmed your decision. PREIT has appealed that decision to the Commonwealth Court, and the court recently directed that briefing on the appeal start in July. Now I want to address our current application. Both the mall parcel and the IKEA parcel are located in the S Shopping Center District, and the ordinance permits PREIT to combine multiple parcels into one tract, lot, or parcel for the purpose of development. Because it is neither operationally nor economically feasible to convert the IKEA building into an apartment building, PREIT proposes to demolish the existing long vacant and dilapidated IKEA office building and construct a 4 to 5 story apartment building. In order to do so, we filed a second application for a special exception under 1100S of the zoning ordinance. Sorry about that. I would turn them off. I've turned my phone off, but it's hooked to my hearing aids. A copy of that application is in our binder. It's Exhibit A1. Now, here's where this starts, in my view, to get a little confusing. So that there is no confusion, you have to be aware that this second application does not request a special exception because the proposed apartment house is a use of the same general character as a motel, motor court, or elderly housing facility. Rather, our current application seeks a special exception under 1100S because our proposed apartment building is of the same general character as a use that is now permitted in the SC district under section 1100Q of the zoning ordinance. That section was created on November 12th, 2022, when council amended the zoning ordinance by adopting ordinance, I think it was number 1686. That ordinance was adopted to permit the conversion of the office building located in the middle of the mall that is owned by Keystone Properties into a newly defined use. In fact, two of them. A high-rise apartment building or a mid-rise apartment building in the SC district. But, and it's a big but, you can only have one of those high-rise or mid-rise apartments if that apartment building is created by the conversion of an existing office building. Because the Keystone office building is the only office building located in the SC district that can feasibly be converted into an apartment building, section 1100Q only applies to the Keystone building. Our proposed apartment house is not permitted under section 1100Q because it cannot be created by the conversion of the existing IKEA office building. However, it is permitted because our proposed apartment house is clearly a use of the same general character as the high-rise building that will be created by the conversion of the Keystone office building. We will offer Ordinance 1686 into evidence. It's marked as Exhibit A2 in the binder. And we will demonstrate that Ordinance 1686 was adopted by council at the specific request of Keystone, the owner of that vacant high-rise office building on the mall. And it is our position that ordinance was specifically drafted to allow that office building and that office building alone to be converted into the exact number of apartment buildings that the vacant building can physically be converted into. To be clear, Ordinance 1686 cannot be used by PREET to convert the long vacant IKEA building into an economically viable apartment building or buildings. Now, this is the unusual part of this to me. When council adopted that ordinance, 1686, it was aware of PREET's desire to construct an apartment house on the IKEA parcel. From our multiple meetings with council and council members, and from our prior application to this board. Despite its knowledge of PREET's desire to build another apartment building, when council adopted ordinance 1686, it did not delete or modify section 1100S of the ordinance to prohibit PREET or some other future owner of the mall to use section 1100S to obtain approval of an apartment house on another area of the mall that would be, quote, of the same general character as the high-rise building that will be created by the conversion of Keystone's office building to a high-rise apartment building. With that background, we are here tonight to demonstrate that the construction of PREET's proposed apartment building is a use of the same general character as the to-be-converted Keystone office building that is now in the process of being approved by council as a conditional use. I may live to regret this statement, but I'll make it anyway. Unlike our prior application, when Tom Comita and Ken Amy, two planners, expressed opposite positions on whether PREET's proposed 12-story building was of the same general character as a theoretical elderly housing assisted living facility, we will introduce the building plans that Keystone has already filed with the township and the building plans for PREET's proposed building. Those two sets of plans will demonstrate, without the help of experts or planners, that while PREET's proposed apartment building is different from Keystone's proposal because it does not involve the conversion of an existing building, it will be of the same general character as the Keystone building. So I offer to answer any questions about my opening before I go forward. I see a couple members of the board sort of looking at me like I'm crazy.
No, I think the board understands the new application and the distinction between the current application and the prior application. What if, Mr. Kaplan, council denies Keystone's conditional use application?
What do you mean, what if they do?
What if they deny it? That means they don't have the use that you're comparing your use to.
Well, it's not the use of it's not a use of the same general character as a use that presently exists. It is a use of the same general character as is permitted.
Permitted. Okay.
And David, they're not going to turn it down. They changed the ordinance.
But it's not done yet, and that's certainly a fair question to ask because you never know. It's not done. But I hear you. I understand your argument about the same.
They've been through two conditional use hearings already.
One conditional use hearing.
One conditional use hearing. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Amuso.
Thank you. Look, Mr. Kaplan talked a lot about things that we don't think this application is. First of all, there's no validity challenge here. There was a lot of allegations that this was made for
Special exception application.
Right, right. And second of all, we don't think it should be a special exception. This is not of the same general use. You heard it from Mr. Kaplan himself. Since we last met, right, since our last application, there is now a new provision governing the SC district. And so now one of the permitted uses in the SC district is an apartment building. And I believe what Preet is proposing here tonight is to build an apartment building, to build apartments. So this is a permitted use. There are restrictions on that permitted use. And what happens in zoning is if somebody wants to build something that's permitted, but there are certain strictures on it, they come in and they ask you for a waiver. And I don't know if you heard this word before, but in zoning that's called a variance, right? So this is really a variance that they're in front of you incorrectly. They've phrased this as a special exception. Yes.
But what of the requirement in the new use
Yes.
that it be an existing office building that is converted to an apartment?
They can ask for you for a variance of that. I mean, clearly apartments are allowed in this district. Before, the debate was you could have old folks' homes, you could have a motel, and they said, well, we want a use that's like that, but not exactly like that. Here, this use is identical. They want to build apartments. Apartments are allowed in the SC district. There are restrictions on the SC district. There is a restriction on the amount of units. The way it's written, it says, yes, you have to convert the building, but they can ask you for a variance for that.
They could ask us for a variance,
Yes.
but what if they look at their own property and say, well, we don't have a physical hardship, therefore we don't think we're entitled to a variance?
Then they're doing an end run around the zoning code. The township has said you can build apartments in this district.
But they can't because they're not converting an existing office building.
So they should get a variance.
Cannot
Right,
do it.
Just like if you wanted to have a driveway, right? And your driveway is going to go 5 feet up to the property line, but this township says, no, you have to be 20 feet from. And you go in and you say, well, here's why I have to put my garage is already here, and there's a bunch of reasons, so that's why I need a variance. You can have a driveway. There's no difference between that.
But it
and
can't
what
go
we're
that
going to-
far.
What?
Here you can't have an apartment at all because unless you're converting an existing office, you can't, it's not permitted.
Right, so they can ask for a variance of that. This is
Understood,
certainly
but-
apartments are permitted.
But if
uses.
they don't think that they have the if they don't think they meet the variance requirements, then they're nowhere. You're saying it's permitted use, and yet it's not because of the conversion factor, the office conversion factor. So it's not a permitted use. It's not a permitted use because there's no conversion. You're saying that they could ask for a variance from the requirement that there be a conversion.
Right, because the same
And
thing.
say, we just want to build an apartment building. We don't want it to be a conversion.
Right.
We just want to build an apartment building, and we want a variance from Q, subsection Q, that the little Roman 1 that says it must be the conversion of an existing building.
Please tell me that, so
Well,
that we got it on the table, and I thank you for what you said. That would be, first of all, a use variance. It's not a dimensional variance. It's not from a side yard or setback. It's from a very explicit provision that goes to the use. So
The same use, apartments.
I'm sorry, what?
It's the same use, apartments.
No, the variance
Well-
that we would be asking for would be a use variance because you have created a new use and limited its applicability to one building. I could have challenged that ordinance. We elected not to challenge that ordinance. In fact, we welcome that ordinance because it allows an apartment building and it allows that vacant building to be converted. But David, you hit the nail on the head. There is no way that Preet can meet the standard for a variance in Pennsylvania. The mere existence of multiple uses on the property is testimony that the property can be used for the purpose for which it's zoned, which is retail and 20 different other things. So how can I conceivably come in here and say, I need a variance. I need a variance, but I can use it for anything that's in the zoning ordinance. That's why we did not think about coming in here for a variance. There are, and Seth's testimony will get into it. Not only did the board, when it adopted this ordinance to take care of Keystone, say that you can only do it if you convert, it would limit, even if we could convert the IKEA building to 50 units, it would limit it to 50 units. It's in the zoning ordinance. You have to dig deep. So while we are very sympathetic to Keystone, that they are able to build a building, council went out of its way to prohibit that new section from being applied to the rest of the mall. Okay. So if we can't do it there, and Peter just made my case on, is it the same or similar? It is the same. It is the same only after their building is converted. We'll get into it. They created new definitions and still left the definition of apartment building. So
I want to give Mr. Musso and Mr. Heleniak a chance to respond before we start any testimony. Absolutely.
I think Greg had something to say.
And I think as much as Mr. Kaplan is stating that we just proved his case, he just proved ours. And I think he proved ours better than any inference that we proved his. What council did in enacting Section Q of this ordinance is not provide for just a permitted use. They provided for a conditional use. Conditional use is a permitted use subject to that use meeting certain conditions. So this isn't something that is peculiar. This is a standard function of zoning. It's a permitted use subject to meeting certain conditions. One of those conditions is the conversion of the office building to permit apartments. It is a variance. And as Mr. Kaplan said, he can represent, we're not here to litigate the variance case because that's not before you and it hasn't been noticed, but he can't prove that. And he also can't prove backdoor a proof of a variance through a special exception case when he's trying to prove that the conversion is neither operationally nor economically feasible to convert that IKEA building into apartments. That's not a special exception argument. That's a hardship argument for a variance case. What he's asking for is a deviation from the conditions or the objective criteria of the conditional use to permit apartments here. It's not a different use. It doesn't say an office conversion to apartments. It says apartments provided, and then lists the objective criteria for a conditional use approval. So a modification of that criteria is a variance. Additionally, as Mr. Kaplan pointed out, the conversion of the IKEA office building would permit them 50 units. I don't know if that calculation is correct. I'm not an architect, an engineer, or a mathematician, but council, one is fully entitled to set conditional use and the criteria for conditional use. That's part of their legislative responsibility and duty. But two, they get to set the criteria as to density. And part of that density calculation is how an existing office building is converted and how many units can be located on how many floors within any SC mall district. So that's really what's on debate here, is what that use is. Is it the same general character when it is the same use? And I think you'll find in going through this, the case law supports that when the use is already provided, another use the same use can't be of the same general character as the use that's already provided, whether or not there are conditions on it or not. That's a different case, and that's not what's before you. There should be no hardship involved here. There should be no deviation from the criteria that's already provided for apartment use in the SC district. That's subverting council's legislative prerogative as to how they want to see apartments developed in the SC district.
Okay. Before we continue, I would like to mark some board exhibits, which I neglected to do at the beginning. The first one will be the proof of publication of notice of the April 17th hearing that was continued, that opened and continued on the record. The second one will be proof of posting of the property with notice of this hearing, of the April 17th hearing. The third will be the application, which Mr. Kaplan has also marked as Exhibit A1, but we will mark it as Board Exhibit 3. And Board Exhibit 4 will be the plan that was submitted with the application. That'll be a Board Exhibit B4. So those will be the board exhibits for this hearing. Let's start with the testimony. Thank you for your opening statements.
I want to make one final comment in response to what Mr. Oleniak said. Greg's statements might very well be true, except for one thing. The board could have changed the provision of 1100S. For whatever reason, it chose to leave the provision of 700S in the ordinance, and there is a statutory rule of construction, Greg, that every part of an ordinance counts. And if the board were to accept what you said, they would have to read Section 1100S out of the ordinance.
They wouldn't. The word apartment is in there. I mean, I think council is pretty clear. You can build apartments in the shopping center district.
I think the language of the ordinance is very clear.
I do too. Okay, so my first witness is John Olenikoff. I'm getting closer, aren't I?
It's Olenikoff because we've seen Mr. Olenikoff at numerous other hearings.
I
and
keep getting
he makes
screwed up by
certain
the
in
J.
Cheltenham. See, in Cheltenham, the J is silent. I don't know about it. We're working on that.
State your full name for the record and spell it.
John Alenikov, ALEJNIKOV.
Please, sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about the this matters the truth of the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
John, I'd like to show you, I gave you a copy of the exhibits. I'd like you to turn to Exhibit 3 in the exhibit book and tell us what that is.
That is a copy of my CV.
And is that CV accurately represent your educational and professional background?
It does.
Please describe for us your educational background.
I have a BS in Civil Engineering from the University of Delaware. I graduated in 2011.
And are you a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
I am. License number PE 086400.
How long have you been practicing as a civil engineer?
I graduated in 2011 and started in August of 2011, and I was licensed in 2017.
And who are you employed by and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Bowler. We are a civil engineering company as a senior project manager.
Please explain for the board your job duties at Bowler.
I'm responsible for plan preparation, reviewing zoning ordinances, coordinating with townships, any municipality really, governing agencies, and shepherding projects from the early concept stage all the way through construction.
Do you regularly engineer and design zoning, subdivision, and land development plans?
I do.
Were you involved in the conversion of the former Macy's building for Burlington Coat, Dick's Sportswear, and Miller Ale House?
Yes, I was.
And in what capacity?
I provided those services, taking it through the early conceptual stages and then guiding it through permitting and then construction.
I'd offer Mr. Olenikoff as an expert in land development, civil engineering, and ask this board to accept him as such.
Board questions for Mr. Olenikoff on his qualifications? Seeing none, any objection, counsel?
No objection on engineering. I'm sorry, what was your background in land development?
Well, I guide plans through the land development process.
No objection.
Thank you. He will be accepted as an expert in civil engineering and land development.
Now, are you the project manager for the proposed development that we are here tonight to discuss?
I am.
And so then you are familiar with the property that's the subject matter of this application?
Yes, I am.
How many lots comprise the Plymouth Meeting Wall?
There are a number of lots, but from an overall bulk criteria standpoint, they are all treated as one overall lot. Historically, that's how they've been treated. The one exception to that is the IKEA parcel that we're discussing, for whatever reason, was not included in those overall bulk standards. This application includes them within that.
And that is, do you remember exactly what section of the ordinance allows that combination?
Section 1103.A.
What portion of the mall property is proposed for development of Preet's apartment house?
It is the portion of the mall that the former IKEA North American headquarters is located on. That building is approximately 40,000 square feet in footprint, and it is 2 stories. It's directly adjacent to the Whole Foods. The Whole Foods is roughly to the north of this site. The AMC is roughly to the east. To the south is the Pennsylvania Turnpike in the form of 276 and 476, and roughly to the west is the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission property.
Okay. You could go to Exhibit A4, A and B. Could you, let's start with A first, and would you just describe, tell us what this plan is?
This is the plan that was submitted as part of this application. It is actually entitled Sketch Plan, prepared by Bowler for PR Plymouth Meeting Limited Partnership. And the date on it is February 14th, 2023. And this is, A is the overall plan view of the mall property and the subject property's location within that.
So B is a blow-up, is it not?
That is correct.
Okay. And was this plan or plans prepared under your direction?
Yes.
So you're familiar with this plan, and particularly with the aspects of this plan as it relates to the proposed apartment house development?
I am.
Okay, so using A4, please explain to the board what is proposed.
The proposal is to demolish the existing IKEA North American headquarters building that's currently vacant. In its place, a 5-story apartment building will be constructed that has about 300 units within it. In addition, there will be parking and then in the future, any necessary items to support the development, such as landscaping, lighting, things of that nature.
Let's move on to the specific development requirements of the SC Shopping District, which are detailed in Section 1101 of the zoning ordinance. Section 1101A requires that the distance at the closest point between buildings or groups of attached buildings shall be not less than 50 feet. Does the proposed apartment building meet this requirement?
It does.
Now, 1101B requires that when a shopping center abuts any residential district, a specific planting screen and lighting facilities must be provided. Does the area of the mall property that is proposed for the apartments abut a residential zoning district?
It does not.
So that section 1101B is not applicable, is it?
I don't believe it is.
Okay. 1101C requires that all buildings within the shopping center be served by township sanitary sewage disposal and public water supply. How does PRE propose to provide sanitary sewer system to the proposed development?
There actually is an existing sanitary connection to the building that is on this site. It is serviced by way of a pump station, so the idea would be to reuse that connection and upgrade the sanitary pump station as necessary to support the development.
And how does the applicant propose to provide water service to the proposed building?
There's existing water infrastructure on site already, so the idea would be to tap into that existing infrastructure and use that.
Next section is 1101D, and that requires that all points of vehicular access to and from the public streets shall be located not less than 250 feet from the intersection of any public street with each other. Does the proposed apartment building comply with this provision?
Yes, it does. This site actually doesn't have direct access to a public street. Access is actually taken from the interior of the mall property. The existing accesses are not proposed to be moved at all, so any existing access that exists on Germantown or Hickory would be used.
Are any changes to the accesses proposed?
There are some changes that are proposed, but there's going to be another applicant who will get into those modifications.
Another witness.
Yes.
Section 1101E requires that provision shall be made for safe and efficient pedestrian and vehicular traffic circulation within the boundaries of the shopping center. Does the proposed apartment house comply with this requirement?
It does, and again, there's going to be another witness who will testify to that.
So just for your information, members of the board, we have Joe DeSantis from McMahon to fully describe the future streets and access, and Bob Campbell from Pannoni to talk about sewer capacity. Now, 1100F outlines requirements for off-street parking in the SC district. Would you agree with me that section 1100F does not provide a parking ratio for apartment buildings constructed in the SC district?
I would agree with that statement.
So at this point, would you please turn to Exhibit 5. Now, this is a copy of section 1700 D10 of the zoning ordinance. Please tell us what this section says about parking requirements for an apartment house.
It requires for an apartment house 1.6 spaces for every dwelling unit.
Please explain to the board how the proposed apartment building will comply with that parking or with applicable parking requirements.
Currently on the mall lot, there are 3,993 parking spaces, which meets the current demand for what's out at the mall. As part of this development, we would be adding 300 apartments to this lot. That would necessitate an additional 480 parking spaces. The plans that were submitted before you does show 451 proposed spaces, and as part of the land development process, we would be able to demonstrate that we could meet that 480 space parking requirement, whether it be through a differentiation in the unit mix or also the addition of parking spaces on the property.
So if a couple of one-bedroom apartments were combined into two-bedroom apartments, the number of parking units would go down, and the 480 required parking spaces would also go down?
That's correct.
Okay. Let's go on to 1101C. That requires that all access roads, parking areas, and other areas for vehicular use shall be paved with bituminous or other concrete material. Does the applicant propose to comply with that requirement?
Just a point of clarification, is that 1101G?
Yeah, if I said something else, I apologize.
So Section 1101G does require that for bituminous paving, and that is something we would comply with, but that's really more of a land development issue.
And similarly, 1101H mandates that all utility lines serving the shopping center be placed underground. Will the proposed apartments comply with this requirement?
Yes, they would, but again, it's a land development item.
Okay. 1101I requires stage development to be planned and to occur so that the requirements of the ordinance are fully complied with at the completion of each stage. Can we comply with that standard?
Yes, I think we would, because really this wouldn't be a staged development. All of the work would really happen at one time.
Okay, let's move on to the dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance with regard to the proposed apartment house. Does the zoning ordinance impose any dimensional requirements upon developments in the SC Shopping Center district?
Yes, they do. Dimensional requirements are found in section 1101.J1 to 8, section 1101.K, and section 1101.L.
Does the proposed apartment house development, as depicted on your sketch plan, comply with the applicable area, bulk, and dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance?
Yes, I believe it does, in that we either comply with those requirements or we are maintaining or reducing an existing nonconformity.
Does the zoning table on Exhibit A5B describe how the proposed apartment house development complies with the applicable dimensional requirements?
It does.
Okay, so referring to the zoning table on A4B, please explain to the board how the proposed apartment house complies.
I apologize, Mark. Where are we? Is this?
Yeah, did you say 1104A1B?
No, I think it's 11, I'm sorry. Where are, in the zoning ordinance or on my plan? Peter?
I'm just trying to figure out where you're talking about.
On the plan,
Okay.
yeah.
On the plan.
Yeah.
These bulk requirements.
A4B.
Oh, A4B. Exhibit
I'm sorry.
A4B.
Yes.
Okay.
I
I
apologize.
thought we were
for
in
that.
still in the zoning.
Yeah, no, you're right. Okay, so just to refresh, we have that table on exhibit, it's on A4B, and that demonstrates compliance with the various dimensional requirements. And I'd ask you to walk through that, those sections, the subsections of 1101J.
So the first one is district area, 10 acres is required. The overall mall property is 75.6 acres. Similarly, lot area, 4 acres is required, 75.6 is proposed. Front yard requirement, 100 feet is required. I would point out there's an existing nonconformity of 52.9 feet that will be maintained along Hickory Road. That's really on the opposite side of the mall from where this is located. The side yard, 50 feet is required. This application proposes 64.7 feet. Rear yard, 50 feet is required and 75.2 feet is proposed. Frontage on public streets is 300 feet for a requirement. Along Germantown Road, 860 feet is proposed, and along Hickory Road, 1,253 feet is proposed. Those are not proposed to change. Maximum impervious coverage, 75% is allowed. There's an existing nonconformity of 83.69%. That existing nonconformity will be reduced to 83.2%. Minimum green space, 25% is required. Again, this is an existing nonconformity of 16.31%, which will be improved to 16.80%.
And then if you could move on to section 1101K.
That covers maximum building coverage. 25% of the total lot area is permitted to be covered by building, and 24.43% is proposed.
And then the next section deals with height. I believe that's 1101L2.
Correct. And this section permits a maximum building height of 40 feet, except that if you have a building setback in excess of 40 feet, you're permitted an additional foot of height for each foot setback you are from that setback line, up to a maximum of 65 feet. And our application will comply with that requirement.
Okay. So I think that's all of the technical, dimensional, area, and bulk and height requirements. Now, I'd like to call to your attention and to the board's attention to section 1101.2, entitled Development Regulations for Mid-Rise and High-Rise Apartments in the Shopping Center District. Does that section apply to Preet's proposed apartment house?
So after discussion with council and the application's planner, it was determined that this would not apply to this application. The reason for that is it cannot be classified as a mid-rise or high-rise building due to the conversion of an existing office building being required. Therefore, since the proposed Preet development is going to be a ground-up construction, it would be therefore classified as an apartment house and not a mid-rise or high-rise apartment building as outlined in 1101.2. Because the zoning ordinance differentiates between those three uses, essentially that would be permitted under the ordinance is what our discussion was.
And what are those three uses so the board understands?
Apartment house, mid-rise apartment building, and high-rise apartment building.
We'll have Session Potter address that. In your opinion, will the proposed apartment development overcrowd the land or create an undue concentration of population in accordance as required by Section 2101, capital D, 3, paren C of the zoning ordinance?
No, I don't believe it will.
In your opinion, will the proposed apartment development have any substantial detrimental effect upon public services and facilities such as police and fire protection, public schools, as required by 2101D3 paren G of the zoning ordinance?
No, I don't believe it will.
In your opinion, will the proposed apartment house development adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare as required by 2101D3 paren J of the zoning ordinance?
No, I don't believe it will.
Lastly, Section 1101A of the zoning ordinance requires a harmonious selection of uses and groupings of buildings, service and parking area, circulation, open space, and that they must be planned and designed as an integral part. Please explain to the board how the proposed apartment house development complies with this standard.
I believe it'll comply by the way it's designed, in that we will have vehicular circulation that will integrate this use into the overall development. In addition, there is going to be pedestrian circulation that, again, will integrate this into the development. Something else to point out is that there will be, landscape, lighting, landscaping, things of that nature that will either meet or exceed the requirements of the ordinance and really what's out there on the site today.
No further questions, David.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Hi, Peter Amuso, representing the township. Did you review the zoning code of the township before your testimony tonight?
I have reviewed the zoning code.
Okay.
Yeah.
You familiar with the definition of mid-rise apartment house in the zoning code?
I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Okay. I can show you. May I approach the witness? So, does that definition look familiar there?
What is it? Definition of mid-rise apartment. Oh. Do we have a section number?
So it's in the definitional section of the
Okay,
code.
which is
Section 200.
So yeah, this is section 200 definitions, the township zoning code. It lists several, dozens and dozens of words in alphabetical order. And so one of those words in alphabetical order is mid-rise apartment house. Does that look accurate?
Yes, it does.
All right. Can you read that aloud?
An apartment house containing 3, 4, and/or 5 habitable stories, residential units within a mid-rise apartment house may be offered for sale or for rent.
Thank you. And I assume you reviewed the zoning application of your client tonight?
Yes, I assisted in putting it together.
Okay, great. So I want to direct your attention to, I guess, the first page of the addendum. So this is tab 1 of your exhibit book, and paragraph 3. Let me know when you got to it.
You're in the addendum, Peter?
Yeah, so your application, has the description attached. So it's the first page of, several pages of detail. Yes. You see paragraph 3 there?
I do.
All right, it says, Preet proposes to demolish the existing building in the IKEA parcel and construct a 4 to 5 story mid-rise apartment building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and you agree that the definition of mid-rise apartment house is an apartment house containing 3, 4, and/or 5 habitable stories, right?
That is what the ordinance said.
Okay. And that's what you're proposing to build, correct?
The proposal is to provide a apartment house that has between 4 and 5 stories.
Okay, great. And that's the definition of mid-rise apartment house in the township, correct?
The township's definition said that it was, I believe I read it, so it was a 3, 4, 5.
All right, I'm just trying, let me ask you this. So the township defines it as an apartment house containing 3, 4, 5 habitable stories, and you've written here that you're going to construct a 4 to 5 story building containing 300 residential units, correct?
That is correct.
All right, so what you're building meets the definition of mid-rise apartment house as defined by the township in its zoning code.
Objection, that calls for legal conclusion.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate question here.
Okay. Do you think it's different than the definition? I mean, it's...
Now you can ask him. I mean, he's a land development expert.
Right, exactly. That's what...
I think it could potentially be included within that definition, yes.
Okay. Whew. All right. And then I'll go to your Exhibit 2, page 2, which is Ordinance 1686 of the Township. Are you familiar with this ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. So on page 2, it says towards the bottom, you see where it says Article 11 of the zoning ordinance is hereby amended to add a new section, 1101.2?
Yes.
All right. And that section is called Development Requirements for Mid-Rise Apartments and High-Rise Apartments in the Shopping Center District, correct?
That is what it says.
Okay. But you don't think that applies to your project?
Yes, I believe there's a separate definition for apartment house, which is what we are falling under.
Where is that definition? So, use a multiple dwelling with common outside access? Is that what you're saying you fall under?
Yes, I think that definition would also apply to this application.
Oh, so, all right, so, and both definitions could apply, correct?
They could.
All right. So, there's all kinds of apartment houses, right, that have multiple dwellings with common outside access, correct?
Correct.
And then, at least the township seems to then have smaller categories within there, depending on how many stories the apartment house is, correct?
There is a definition that includes multiple stories, yes.
Okay. All right. So 1101.2 is called Development Requirements for Mid-Rise Apartments, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And you've applied to build a mid-rise apartment, correct?
I believe we're saying this is an apartment house.
Okay, let's go back to your app. You helped write this, right?
I help provide plans and general answering of questions for it, yes.
All right, paragraph 3 of your application says you're building a 4 to 5 story mid-rise apartment building, correct?
I am objection.
Well, it speaks for itself.
It speaks for itself.
Speaks for itself, and that's, you asked that, he said, yes, it says what it says, and I think that's makes it point.
All right. So, the township has development requirements for mid-rise apartments, correct?
That is correct.
All right, so let's go through them. We're on page 2. The first requirement is that,
We're back on Exhibit A2 now.
sorry, yes, A2, page 2. This is the ordinance passed by the township, number 1686.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Tab A2 in your book. Page 2.
Right, okay, yeah.
Toward the bottom.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so you're proposing to build, in your words, the 4 to 5 story mid-rise apartment building in the shopping center district, correct?
We're proposing to build an apartment building in the shopping center district. That is correct.
Sure, but your application calls it a 4 to 5 story mid-rise apartment
enough
building,
for-
correct?
I think that's what the application says.
All right, and do you
We've
agree with
established
that? Your
The
application?
application says that, yes.
And do you agree with the application?
The application says that, yes. It's in the binder.
All right. All right, so let's go through then the requirements for a mid-rise apartment in the shopping center district, which is the bottom.
Objection, we're not here under section 1100Q. It's not applicable.
It's 100%
That's
applicable.
That's your legal argument.
Yeah.
Let's
So
give
let's-
them leeway to ask questions about it. Because it goes to their argument.
All right. So the minimum district area, I believe, says the minimum size of a shopping center district in which mid-rise apartments, which is what you're building, may be located, shall be 50 acres. Are you on 50 acres?
Yes, the mall is over 50 acres in size.
On top of the next page, setbacks. So the mid-rise apartments shall be located a minimum of 100 feet from the boundary of the shopping center district. Is that, you meet that requirement?
I don't have the exact boundaries of the district in front of me.
Okay. So you're not sure, or you think,
I-
or, do you have?
I don't know.
Objection. He answered the question. He doesn't have it in front of him.
Got it. How about a minimum of 75 feet from the ultimate right way of any street?
I believe we would comply with that, yes.
All right, project density. It says the maximum density within any shopping center district shall be 30 units per gross acre, based only upon the acreage of the property proposed for redevelopment with no more than 50 units in any one mid-rise apartment building. Are you proposing to build more than 50 units in your mid-rise apartment building?
The application is to construct 300 units.
And we agreed 300 is more than 50.
We did.
Okay, great. All right, and then D, shopping center district density. It says, in addition to the project density specified in subsection 1101.2C above, specifically 50 units for your mid-rise apartment building, it says a maximum of 150 apartments shall be permitted on any property subject to redevelopment pursuant to this section, and a maximum of 300 apartment units shall be permitted within the SC zoning district. In the event multiple applications are pending before the township, which if granted would exceed the 300 unit maximum, the applications will be considered in the order in which preliminary approval is granted. And you said you're proposing 300 units?
That's correct.
All right, which is equivalent to the 300 unit maximum for the shopping center district?
That is correct.
Do you know, are there any applications out there as well for this district before you? Yeah, in order, like preceding you in time?
I know there's another application that has started the process to go through conditional use. I don't know whether they're ahead of us or behind us or.
Do you know how many units? Sorry, to interrupt. How many units are they applying for?
I believe they're around 150 units.
All right, E, building spacing. Is your mid-rise apartment building space at least 100 feet from each other? I guess you're only building one, right?
Correct. We're only building one.
And I believe it says off-street parking spaces for mid-rise shall be provided at 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. I think you talked about complying with 1.6. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And
So
I think
more parking would be required under the other section.
amenity space. Do you know if you're providing a minimum of 330 square feet of amenity space for each apartment unit?
I'm not an architect, but so I would have to defer to whoever's designing that amenity space.
Okay.
Mr. Shapiro will testify to that.
Okay. All right, it says unit mix. Mid-rise apartments may contain a mix of efficiency, one-bedroom, and two-bedroom units, provided that no more than 50% of the total units in an apartment building shall be two-bedroom units. Do you know what your mix is?
There is a mix on this plan, though it is a bit small. But it says that. Sorry.
Is this A4A or A4B?
Yes, and I believe we would comply with that requirement.
Is that exhibit A4A or A4B?
Exhibit A4B has a unit mix, which is really in the parking chart, where
Minimum apartment unit mix, bottom row of the zoning table.
no, actually, if you go under oh, actually, yes, it does call it out there. Yes, you are correct.
And it's a good point. In fact, you have all the requirements for 1101.2 on your plans, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I believe you said you're working on a traffic study. You have one. That's another expert, right?
Another witness.
Sure. Same for the fiscal impact and the sanitary sewer studies? Other witnesses?
Yeah, other witnesses.
Do you know if you're meeting the buffering and berming requirements?
I believe what that says is that will not be applicable.
Great. All right, so it's sounds like you're meeting most of the requirements of mid-rise apartment buildings, except perhaps the density of the district.
Objection calls for speculation. He already said that there's certain things he doesn't know about.
Fine. I'm not trying to push on this one. I'm just going through it. No further questions. Thanks.
Board questions for Mr. Olenikoff? Ms. Les?
I mean, the one question I have is why 300? Where did you come up with 300 as an acceptable number of dwellings?
I think that's more for Sesha Byra. We'll be glad to have him answer that question. I don't think that's in the engineer's purview.
So what about the living in Plymouth Township for over 16 years, as there's been development, there's been a lot of sinkholes. So what kind of research has been done on the land under the proposed dwelling, proposed structure?
That's a land development issue, not a special exception
Well,
issue.
as a professional engineer, he may know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I'll let him answer that if you know.
So as Mark said, that would be more of a land development item, but what is done when you're during that process is you do geotechnical exploration to determine if there are any sinkhole, or if there is potential for sinkholes to form, and then you design accordingly around that.
So that's a requirement before building?
Correct. Yes, we would have to do that. Certainly architects, structural engineers would want to know what the subsurface conditions are. As a civil engineer, we would need to know what those conditions are when it comes to infiltration facilities, so as to not exacerbate any potential sinkhole problems.
That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It says it explicitly, it seems to me, and seems to be something Mr. Musso may have been getting at, in Cross, that that there could be no more than 50 units in any one mid-rise apartment building. So you're proposing one building, but you're looking for 300 units. How do you square that circle?
And again, this comes back to the section which we're submitting under, in which those requirements of that section would not be applicable.
Why not?
Because we're submitting under that special exception section.
Okay. That's the question I have. Thanks.
Mr. Brill? You mentioned access, property access via vehicles, Germantown Play, Hickory Road. Could you provide some more detail on how many access points there are and how many access points this new apartment building or mid-rise apartment building, whatever you want to call it, will have?
I'm going to have Joe DeSantis testify at length about that. And what improvements are going to be made.
Okay, that's fine.
I think it'll be more time or less time consuming.
So the only follow-up I had to that is it possible to have, and this is yes or no, one single access point from Hickory Road to this building?
Again, I'm going to defer to the traffic engineer because there's more than physical constraints that go into having a single access.
Okay, you're a professional engineer, right? Licensed engineer?
I am,
Okay.
yes.
No more questions.
So at this stage, we're basically going over whether or not you fall within the physical parameters of the proposed definition of a mid-rise apartment. Are you responsible for the walkability and the sidewalks and all that stuff?
That is a part of what I do, yes.
Is that, so are they, I guess, are you allowing pets in this apartment? Has that been considered?
I don't know. But the walkability and the connectivity, that's going to
So that's not.
do the walkability, Joe's going to do the access. And
Okay, so that's
connective.
not for now.
Yeah,
We
you'll
just
get
pushed it.
more out of Seth.
And when we say 4 to 5, is it built into a hill and some of them are going to be, and is any of the parking going to be underneath or is it all surface?
There is a parking facility associated with it.
So it'll be a parking building above ground
That's correct.
and below, or
We have my next witness is going to.
that's all that stuff?
All that stuff.
All right, no further questions at this stage, thank you.
Okay.
So I have.
Redirect.
Yeah, so, Mr. Alenkov, I have in front of me on my iPhone, section 1100 of the zoning ordinance. What is it titled? Yeah,
1104 is entitled.
No, 11.
1100 is entitled Use Regulations.
Could you read slowly subsection A?
A is retail store.
No.
Oh,
I'm sorry, not A, but the first paragraph under 1100.
retail store.
No.
Oh, so I'm sorry. A building or combination of buildings may be erected, altered, or used, and a lot may be used or occupied for any of the following purposes and not others.
And not others, right?
Correct.
Okay, so let's go now to my Exhibit 2, Ordinance 1686. And I'd like you to look at where it says Section 1100. Well, let's start up at the top. Read the now therefore.
Now, therefore, be it enacted and ordained by the Council of Plymouth Township, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, that the Plymouth Township zoning ordinance is hereby amended as follows.
Subsection A is text amendment, correct?
Yes.
And when we come down, and it says, I'm sorry, let's go down to section 1100 and read that. Read the title of that.
Section 1100 of the zoning ordinance is hereby amended to renumber existing subsections 1100Q, 1100R.
Wait a minute, I'm not sure I'm reading the same thing you are.
The problem is there's several mentions of
Yeah.
Section 1100.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because there was more than one
Yeah.
amendment to Section
Yeah,
1100.
yeah, I get it.
Um,
The first one after where it says high-rise apartment house.
Section 1100 of the zoning ordinance is hereby amended to add a new subsection 1100Q to read as follows.
Okay, so stop there. So if we go back to section 1100 that you just read, adding another section would allow another permitted use, wouldn't it?
It would.
Okay, now read us what Q says.
Mid-rise apartments and high-rise apartments only when one, an existing building previously or currently used for office purposes is being converted into mid-rise apartments or high-rise apartments, and two, authorized as a conditional use.
Stop there. So, based on what you know about our development, about the Plymouth Meeting Mall, is it possible for Preet to...
Objection. This is the
Well,
legal
I-
conclusion that he objected to, and I asked similar questions.
Well, he hadn't finished the question yet.
Fine, but I'm going to object before
I don't even get the question out of my mouth.
Well, that's why I said we're not going to rule on it yet. You get to finish the question.
Okay? Based on your knowledge of the Plymouth Meeting Mall, is there an existing building previously or currently used for office purposes that Preet can convert into a mid-rise building, John?
I don't believe there is.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Recross?
I just want to. Sorry. No further question.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kaplan.
Can we take 2 minutes so
Sure.
I can get ahead? Thank you.
Take a 2-minute break.
Is it 10? I think the building closes at 9.
I like 9:30 better.
Well, that's all right. Well, 9's not going to happen. We've stayed past 9 many times.
Okay.
You'll hear an announcement. It'll actually come on and say, in 5 minutes, the building's closing at 9. It's 8:45. The building's closing at 9. Then it's 5 of 9, and they announce it again.
But we
You'll
can
jump
stay,
at
we can stay past that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stay
Yes,
till
we
9
can-
tomorrow morning.
I won't be here that long.
Hey, these guys, the chair gets to determine when to stop.
That goes beyond my.
No pressure, Dave.
All now.
Right.
He'll be here. He'll be at the end. That's fun. End of all. That's fun. Not just minutes.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, shoot. This is.
Thank you.
He's got 3 more.
I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight thinking about this.
Starting from his experience.
Well, here's where I have some issues.
It goes
It's
all the way through.
highly intriguing.
Oh, no, that's all right.
This is stuff that land use attorneys just
It's actually
live for.
incredibly frustrating.
Like, I'm not.
2 or 3? They're all
So who do I need to go to? I've already called.
One's a bigger shed. Two One's a garage and setback.
They're the ones. Yeah.
Did not get a chance to say anything tonight?
We heard, we didn't hear.
Is gonna fire me out, man.
I didn't realize it was 10.
You're good. You're
I
good.
was there for all of them, but that was all of them. Right? No,
Yes.
So I spoke to you today. I was just chatting with that gentleman in the corner that said there would not be any public comments tonight, which, is that accurate?
That would be up to the solicitor, right?
They're not going to public comments tonight.
The what?
For
Probably,
this hearing?
probably not, because it's testimony and it's going to be continued and continued.
I hope not continued and continued.
Well, so
We went 6 months last time,
But
I know this has been going a while, and that's why
but this is different, so
I know.
it should be
But I
shorter.
don't want to call. So I have a real issue on getting information of what's for when. So I called
It's,
and said I was coming in
29.
to give a public opinion because I'm for it, and all I ever read is how people complain.
I don't know how much.
But
There'll be
for
there'll
you
be a
not
lot
to tell
more
me
than
that
the
I sat here for no
announcement.
reason.
They will make an announcement.
Like,
back for
it's hard to get the
time.
information on what the
Yeah.
meetings are for and when. They're not always
We were
posted.
here the
Like,
other
my
night.
news is from more than a curve. I don't know if
Yeah.
you are familiar with
Yeah,
that.
we got
I've heard
thrown
about
out.
it, but it should, everything should be
Yeah, we
posted.
got.
It's when. It's
We
not
got
always.
thrown
So when
out.
Dave was
Or
there, there
at
were a
least
couple
the
months with, I came
chairman
in
of
and
the
talked to you guys
planning
about
commission
fencing.
didn't
And
know
he's
who
like,
to say
keep
yes
checking,
to.
we're gonna change the
Yeah.
ordinance on
Yeah.
fencing and keep an eye out.
Oh.
Yes.
And then things weren't posted, and then I'd call and they're like,
We
well,
would
we're not
stop
required to
here
post
before.
things. Like,
They get thrown
it's
out.
real loosey-goosey, is my point. But I'd like to
They have
give,
to advertise every hearing.
when do they advertise? If it goes up and when? Like, it's that type
For
of
2
thing.
weeks before the hearing in the newspaper.
So,
It has to advertise for 2 Fridays.
so how would I know when I can give any comment to this whole tree thing then?
He wants to give comment.
Usually it's after everybody does their thing.
I know, but I was just heard that could be months and months and
Yeah,
months away, but how
probably
would I know
6
when that
months.
is?
It's up to
Call
these
the
guys
township.
when they.
Yeah, you can call and check
Call
in.
Karen Weiss. Call town.
So when I call, I get the bare minimum of like, legally, we don't have to do this or that, or blah, blah, blah. Even the stop signs
You
in
could
my
probably
street.
submit it in writing, and that would be on the record.
It'd probably be a better issue for council if you're
Yeah,
concerned
well,
about application.
So we don't know when they're going to be finished.
I right now.
So I can't say come back like
I know.
August 10th.
I just assumed because when I came for the fencing one, at the end of everything,
They just got started.
This is a marathon.
I know it's gonna be.
Last time was 10 months.
But I want to kind of give a positive opinion and some of this back and forth. You guys must lose your mind here in
Yeah.
the weeds of this.
Well, you know what it is? There's so many moving parts. It's like, how do
I
we
know.
cover all this stuff?
So where I grew up, look up Slyman Properties Century 3 Mall. I would hate to see that somehow. I'm going to speak.
Where's that? Where's that? What town?
Near Pittsburgh. But
Yeah.
it's just an empty structure now. It's where we hung out as kids.
Yeah.
It's a huge mall, bigger than this one. And I go out in Redstone. I don't know if you've been there lately. It's not the same. Bertucci's is now gone. I rode my bike back to this dilapidated building. I mean, there's nothing there. So if these guys can't just get the legal stuff together, I mean, it's like, you know. So that's my 2 cents. That was all I wanted.
Are you in favor of this or
Yes.
opposed to?
No.
I'll
Like,
call you.
every time I miss a meeting, it's either with public comment, it's somebody complaining about traffic or complaining about the sewer line's another thing. Like stuff that can be figured out.
Give me your.
Johnson Road.
No, give me your name, your number, your email address, and we'll try and tell you.
I appreciate it.
There's nothing new. This is done all over the country. This is nothing new. It's really frustrating.
Yeah.
There's a lot of space in back there. Mark, are these extras? Can I steal the binder?
Jump.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, sir.
What do you got
Actually,
going
I'm
on?
gonna grab one too, so I
I
can
want to put a garage in my backyard.
More than to give you one, but I appreciate
It
it.
served me 25 years ago when I put a fence in. This guy's, the smallest garage they'll do is 24 by 24.
Yeah, you let me know in public comments. That might be a better route than
Okay, thank you.
Permit, building permit, and they can come out and look at it. Where she laid out.
So I can give you your setbacks.
Well, it's four,
Digital
it's
plan.
four on the side.
Yeah.
one on the back. I know that.
So Jim Wallace, the code enforcement director, can give you every piece of
The
information.
time is now 8:45, and the critical minute community
Yeah,
service in 13
I
minutes.
can ask you tomorrow.
So when are we
Sorry.
doing? What's our hard stop? 9:30.
But buy lunch.
I don't know.
That's up to the chair.
I like
It comes out at
9:30.
lunchtime, you know what I mean?
Because
I think 10's
You might
too late.
just
I
get
think
it
like
without
9:30.
Cool.
So
Why don't we
I-
get through this witness and we'll.
Yeah, so then I could let Joe and Bob go if they want to. Go home, Joe.
Is that all right with the parties
Absolutely,
agree? that that's-
absolutely, yes.
We'll go through Mr.
Yeah,
Shapiro and then that'll be
Makes
it.
sense.
It's a nice way to say we don't need you. Hey, guys. Have fun.
It's a nice system. Oh, it's a nice thing I can say there.
Jumping out the window. All right.
Video conferencing was much more efficient.
It really was.
No, I'm good, don't worry.
Ronnie
died.
died about a year ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not up on that Philadelphia stuff.
Oh, my God.
Don't even go there.
Yeah, don't even go there. Don't
Time
even go there.
is just.
Are you ready for me to start?
Is everybody here? Is
Ready, guys?
Paul is ready?
Yep.
Yeah, we're ready.
On the record.
Take it from me for the record, sir.
My name is Seth Shapiro.
Raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is truthful, the truth, and
Yes.
thank you.
Mr. Shapiro, tell us your business address and who you are.
Sure. My name is Seth Shapiro. I am a principal and director of urban design for a firm called Barton Partners. Barton Partners Architects Planners, Inc. is the name of the business. We are located in Norristown at 700 East Main Street.
And I'd like you to look at Exhibit A6 and identify that.
That would be my curriculum vitae.
And is that an accurate representation of your experience and your education?
Yes, it is.
Please describe your educational background for the board.
I have formal training as an architect, resulting in a first professional degree from the University of Miami School of Architecture, where I received a Bachelor's of Architecture in 1995. I have a post-professional degree called a Master of Architecture in Urban Design, or MAUD, which I received from the Harvard University Graduate School of Design in the year 2000.
Tell us your role in your firm and specifically with regard to this project.
So I practice in the space between planning and architecture, and I've been doing that for 20 years. I focus almost entirely on conceptual architectural design and land use entitlements. My role entails working with clients at the early stages of projects, envisioning what's possible architecturally for their properties, within and sometimes outside of the confines of the zoning requirements that govern those properties. I'm also in charge with presenting those projects to municipal boards, planning commissions, municipal, any governing bodies, as well as community groups involved in outreach in support of entitlement.
Could you testify at the prior hearing regarding the 503-unit apartment, and were you accepted as an expert by this board?
Yes, I was.
So I'd offer Mr. Shapiro as an expert in architectural design and urban planning.
So no objection to architectural design, but urban planning, is that different than land development or zoning?
He's got a master's from Harvard in urban planning.
Urban design, but yes.
Urban design.
Urban
Yeah,
design
it's architecture. So I would object to any planning expertise, but architecture, sure.
Well, I think that's exactly what he does.
Yeah, it's actually, urban design is the junction of architecture and land planning. What I'm not is, I will not provide you with a fiscal study. That's also planning. That's sort of more policy-oriented planning. I'm a physical planner.
Why don't we say urban physical planning?
Fine with me.
I mean, architectural design and urban physical planning.
Urban design would be fine. I object to the word planning.
Urban design is perfect.
Thank you.
Okay,
No,
we'll take it. I'm glad we got there.
This is urban design.
Any questions from the board on Mr. Shapiro's qualifications? All right, he will be admitted as an expert in architectural design and urban design.
Tell us what your role is with the design of the proposed apartment house that we're here to discuss tonight.
So I set the initial design direction of the proposed development here.
And have you visited the property?
Yes.
And are you generally familiar with the surrounding area as well?
Yes, I actually grew up in King of Prussia, so I'm very familiar with the area.
So I'd like you to look at Exhibit A7. It's a series of documents. Did you prepare these documents, or were they prepared under your direction?
Yes, I had members of my staff at my firm prepare these renderings.
Okay, we had hoped to put these on a board, okay.
Everybody's got it.
Okay. Would you please describe for the board what is depicted on these documents?
Sure. These are two digitally rendered perspectives of the proposed apartment house building from two different vantage points, both close to the existing Whole Foods. The first being in the parking lot of the Whole Foods looking towards the building. The second being sort of at the side of the access drive that leads one behind the Whole Foods to where the Whole Foods underground parking is. And what it depicts is the both 4-story and 5-story portion of this building. As you may be aware, the site sort of has a step to it. So right in front of the Whole Foods, the building would be 4 stories, but then it steps, with a flat roof, it steps down to 5 stories as you reach the turnpike. The building is laid out to be between 275 and 300 units, depending on the total mix. Right now, we are at 300 units, but that may change down to as little as 275, depending on the ultimate mix that we do.
Can you please explain how the proposed apartment house has been designed to be compatible with the character of the shopping center district where it is located, as well as the surrounding area?
So this is a sort of a really interesting location in the region. Almost kind of, you can equate it to the corner of Maine and Maine, where 476 and the Turnpike come together. It's actually quite similar to how the highways come together in King of Prussia, in that infrastructure exists, and that's where development generally follows. So it's extremely highly visible. It's a very high visibility location. And the existing office tower on the mall property serves to enhance that somewhat. It's kind of a landmark. And so we believe that the, sort of the height and the density of the building shown here is perfectly appropriate, located at the junction of that regional infrastructure. Additionally, this is absolutely consistent with what land use trends are today, where you have malls that are not reaching their potential because of either they're overbuilt, there's too much competition, the regional mid-sized mall is really falling by the wayside. And the solution to that is to promote a mix of uses, rather than the segregation of uses, which is what most township zoning ordinances promote. In this case, the proposed integration of residential use into a commercial center can help actually reinvigorate the retail concentration on the site so that it stays healthy in the future.
I'd like you to go to Exhibit A8 and identify this plan.
So this is a connection improvement concept plan, and Mr. DeSantis from McMahon will go into a little bit more detail about this. But what I wanted to do was use this to describe the location of the building overall and how it will be connected to the mall. So I'm just going to jump into that.
Would you please?
Yeah. So as I think I mentioned, maybe I haven't yet, this is a trend that's happening all over the country, and you can't just plop an apartment building into a parking lot in the shopping mall and sort of call it a day and say, hey, we've made it mixed use. Because it would still be sort of a series of single uses that are just adjacent to one another. What you have here is actually we have an apartment building that is adjacent to a Whole Foods market. It's adjacent to a movie theater, and it's adjacent to the rest of the amenities, the sort of the restaurants that are on this parcel. The site itself becomes an amenity, and pedestrian connectivity to those uses is key. While the plan here shows the vehicular connectivity improvements, which is always a concern, and again will be addressed later, the pedestrian connectivity by the proximity of these uses will be addressed as the plan becomes more detailed. But if you look at this, it's not hard to imagine that the residents of this building who might actually work at the mall, or whatever sort of future uses are at the mall, who shop at the Whole Foods, you could actually see them going a week or more without actually getting into their car and going someplace. And that, to me, is the definition of smart growth.
In your earlier testimony, you stated that you testified for Preet in the first application. Please tell us what Plymouth Council did after the completion of Preet's first application that caused this second application to be filed.
So last fall, I think it was November 14th, in 2022, Plymouth Council adopted Ordinance 1686, which added a number of new sections to the zoning provisions for the SC district.
Okay, so let's start with the changes that that ordinance made to Section 200, the definitional section of the zoning ordinance.
I object to this witness's testimony on this. He's not a planning expert. He's here about urban design. I mean, I guess if he wants to comment about what he thinks about urban design and what they...
We're going to allow it to go. Let's proceed.
Let's go back to, I think it's 2. Yeah, 2. So in this ordinance 1686, what changes did the ordinance make to the definitional section of the ordinance?
It added 2 additional use definitions to section 200, mid-rise apartments and high-rise.
Now, was there already a definitional section for an apartment?
Yes.
And for an apartment house?
There was already a definition for an apartment house.
So, I think that Mr. Lenikoff read that definition, did he not? Peter, do you?
Sure, the apartment house definition?
Yeah.
A multiple dwelling with common outside access.
So now, Mr. Spiro, we have now 3 definitions of buildings that can house multiple apartments. Is that accurate?
I believe that is accurate.
Again, just know my ongoing objection is any kind of analysis he's making of the zoning code. He's not an expert in this.
Okay, I understand that, and we'll allow it to continue because I think that when he's designing something, he's got to refer to what uses are permitted, and that goes to what is permitted.
Let's move on to section 1100Q. Please explain what section 1100Q does.
So section 1100Q adds mid-rise apartments and high-rise apartments as permitted use in the SC district, but as conditional uses. However, those uses have very limited application, as Ordinance 1686 provides that a mid-rise or high-rise apartment building can only be created or built in the SC district if it results from the conversion of an existing office building.
The time is now
in the
9
shopping
o'clock,
center
and the Greater
district.
Plymouth Community Center is now closed. Please make your way towards the exit at this time.
So Mr. Pyro, it's not fair to say, is it, that a section 1100 allowed mid-rise and high-rise apartments and stop there. It only allowed mid-rise and high-rise apartments if a building was there and that building was converted.
That is correct.
That's the use, is it not?
Objection, that's the ultimate legal conclusion. He's objected every time I try to ask his witnesses that.
I agree. We'll sustain.
Okay. So let me ask it this way if I can, David. So the mid-rise and high-rise apartments are only permitted in the SC district if there's already an office building and the owner wants to convert the office building to an apartment building. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Have you examined the township zoning map, a copy of which we included as Exhibit A9?
Yes, I have.
Have you determined whether there are any other properties located in the SC district in this township that are to be susceptible to a conversion of an existing office building into a mid-rise or a high-rise building?
Yeah, there's only one relatively large parcel, which is the Plymouth Square Shopping Center, which is at Butler and Ridge, and it's currently being renovated. It has some offices in the lower levels from down in the back that the owner of that center, I think it's Brixmore Properties,
Yes.
recently outfitted and moved part of its corporate offices into. But it doesn't have a separate building that would be a candidate for conversion to apartments, like the Plymouth Meeting Mall. There are also there are a couple of small strip centers throughout the township, but none of them have an office building. I think those strip centers are SC, but none of them have office buildings.
Do you know who requested the adoption of Ordinance 1686?
Yes, Keystone
Yeah,
Properties.
objection to relevance, again, it's not a validity challenge. I don't know what matters, who requested it.
I agree. Where's this line of questioning going? I mean,
Well, this is the background of, look, the township changed this ordinance and put us in a terrible box. And
but
I
you're applying
think-
for a special exception.
I understand. And we've been attacked by saying we should have been here for a variance. And I want this witness to tell why we're not here for a variance. This ordinance was asked for by Keystone and was obviously designed for Keystone and was not...
Objection to the testimony here. I mean,
Yeah,
again, this is not a validity challenge.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Kaplan.
Okay.
We're not going to go there.
So, all right, it's not a big deal. Okay. Do you know if Keystone has filed a conditional use application to convert its building into a high-rise office building?
Yeah, Keystone presented its conditional use application to the Planning Commission just last week. I believe Mr. Lednikoff also testified to that.
Could you explain to the board why PREET cannot do the same thing that Keystone has done and apply for a conditional use to convert the IKEA building into a mid-rise building or a high-rise building?
Sure. The Keystone building, as I think everybody's familiar with, is an 11-story rectangular-shaped building that can be converted without the construction of additional floors. And each floor can relatively easily be laid out for apartments, which is unique for an office building, actually. This is not the case for many modern office buildings. The plans which accompany the Keystone application demonstrate how this conversion can work on each floor. The IKEA building, the subject that we are here about, on the other hand, is very unusually shaped. It contains only 2 stories. The odd shape of the building cannot be converted into a viable apartment building design. 2 stories of apartments are also not economically viable. And it's both economically and physically impossible to add multiple stories to the existing IKEA building. Finally, Ordinance 1686 specifically limits the number of apartment units in a mid-rise building to 50 units. If it were feasible to convert the IKEA building to a mid-rise apartment building, which it's not, it would not be economically feasible to convert to only 15 units because the cost of that conversion and the additional construction would be so high that the conversion could not support the kind of amenities that would be needed to compete in the marketplace. My guess is the overall economics of the project would not support the associated expenses, taxes, insurance, mortgage, et cetera, to support the construction, as those costs are amortized across a number of units. And 50 units just isn't realistic.
So would you agree with me that Ordinance 1686 not only permits Keystone to convert its office building to a high-rise building, but also prevents PREET from doing the same thing by converting the IKEA building?
Absolutely. Not sure whether it's by design or happenstance, but Ordinance 1686, when it comes down to it, only permits Keystone to convert its large office building into 150 apartments, the maximum that can physically fit into that building.
Let's move on to the section that we're here about, and that's 1100S. Could you please tell us what it provides?
So, Section 1100, subsection S, permits the use in SC District Zone properties of any use of the same general character as a permitted use.
So, we're here tonight seeking a special exception approval to permit the proposed apartment building as a use of the same general character as any of the permitted uses in the SC District. In your opinion, is the proposed apartment house development that you just described for us a use of the same general character as any of the other uses specifically permitted in the SC District?
Okay.
I object as an ultimate legal conclusion, and he's not an expert.
It is the ultimate legal conclusion, but in what capacity are you asking him this question? I mean, you can only ask him this question as an expert in architecture
Absolutely.
and urban design.
Yeah.
I think is what we,
Yeah.
architectural design and urban design.
I'm not asking him that from a legal point of
We'll,
view.
we'll let him answer the question, and the board will accord it the weight that it wishes to accord.
From an architectural perspective.
From an architectural perspective.
Yes.
And which of the uses specifically permitted in the SC district is the proposed apartment house development of the same general character?
The mid-rise and high-rise apartment uses that are now permitted in the SC district when an existing building previously or currently used for office purposes is converted ultimately into mid-rise or high-rise apartments.
Please explain to the board why you are of the opinion that the proposed use is of the same general character as the mid-rise or high-rise, which will result from the conversion of the Keystone building.
From an architectural standpoint.
From an architectural standpoint. I agree.
Happy to.
Thank you.
After the Keystone building is converted, it will function as a conventional multi-story apartment building and will be marketed as luxury rental housing. Preet's proposed apartment community will also be a luxury multifamily community. The only thing that prevents them from being identical uses is the proposed Preet apartment building cannot be classified as a mid-rise building as required by section 1100S.
1100.
Point S. S.
Are you familiar with the Keystone office building?
Yes, I am.
And do you have knowledge of the development plans for that property?
I am aware. Since we filed the special exception for this application since we filed the special exception application for this project on March 2nd, Keystone filed a conditional use and land development application which proposes to convert the existing office building into high-rise apartments, and that application, of course, includes the drawings.
And have you had the opportunity to review and analyze the plans and other materials filed in connection with the office building conversion
Yes, I
by
have.
Keystone?
Yes, I have.
Turning your attention to A10, could you tell us please identify what A10 is?
Sure. So A10 is actually two sheets. And what we've done here is we've taken the plans that were submitted by Keystone of the redesigned office building, and we've circled in red one of their one-bedroom units.
So just so I understand, okay, it says Bernardin up at the top of that drawing.
Correct. Bernardin is the architecture firm that Keystone has hired.
And these are the plans that were submitted to the township and which we obtained through a right-to-know request. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So-
Sorry, go ahead.
So what you see is a one-bedroom apartment. It is approximately 24 feet wide. My guess is it's probably 750 to 780 square feet. On the right of that page is a one-bedroom apartment that is proposed in the Preet building. That apartment is 24 feet wide and is 33 feet deep. Just doing a little bit of math, my guess is that's between 750 and 780 square feet. Also includes a balcony, which is, I'd say, the only really substantive difference between the two plans. On the second sheet, we've done the same thing, where while the Keystone building is showing a combination of 1 and 2 bedroom units, so is the building that Preet is proposing. What you see on the left side, again, on the sheet that says Bernardin on it, is a typical 2-bedroom unit. That unit is 36 feet wide. On the right side, you see a 2-bedroom unit that would be proposed for the Preet building. That unit is 36 feet wide and is 33 feet, 31 feet, between 31 and 33 feet deep, depending on pushes and pulls, and will be between 1,050 and 1,200 square feet.
In your expert opinion as a planner, architect, how similar would you say that the mid-rise, the apartment house proposed by Preet is to the proposed high-rise building that Keystone intends to convert to apartments?
From an architectural standpoint.
From an architectural, okay. They will be incredibly similar. I can go through some of the differences architecturally if you'd like. In some places, because of the depth of the floor plate of the IKEA office building, there will be some units that have something called borrowed light, which the second bedroom actually won't have window access. It'll have a sort of a transom window, and that light that comes in from the living room and through the transom window. Our building won't do that. It's not an ideal situation. You see it in office conversions a lot, but we won't have that. But both buildings will be highly amenitized. Though the proposal that we have in front of you is probably a little bit more consistent with some of the newer apartment communities you see, especially in King of Prussia. They'll have a nice landscape courtyard, an outdoor swimming pool, a full amenity court, and a structured parking deck. But in the end, both are very similar. Both will be marketed to the same demographic. Rents will, my guess, be relatively similar. I would think the Preet building might be at a slight premium because of the extra amenities, but they are essentially the same.
So if they're so similar, why hasn't Preet followed the same procedure as Keystone and filed an application for conditional use with council?
Well, Preet's building is actually not a use permitted under section
Objection, that's a
1100Q.
legal conclusion. He's not a planning expert.
Well, from his, we're taking this as his architectural.
Right, from an architectural, because it's not a conversion of an office building.
Right, okay. I think this is all very clear to the board. I think the board gets the whole difference between a mid-rise apartment and what Preet can and can't do because of the conversion factor. Very clear.
That is the essence of the difference. Okay, so I've just got a couple more questions for Seth. Are you familiar with the portions of the Plymouth 2040 Comprehensive Plan introduced in the testimony at the prior hearing, of which I have marked as Exhibit A11?
Yes, I am.
Let me get to it.
Objection to relevancy of a planning document. This is a zoning hearing board.
That's wild. In a special exception.
How is it relevant? I mean, I think I know why it's relevant.
You've got all these general provisions that say, does it fit in with the community? Will it be a detriment?
We'll overrule the objection, allow the line of questioning.
In your opinion, is the apartment house proposed by Preet under this application in accord with the goals and visions for Plymouth Township as set forth in the sections of the 2040 Comprehensive Plan that we've marked as Exhibit A11?
Objection. He's not a planning expert. He's an architectural expert.
We'll let him answer about the architecture proposed in this plan versus the proposed. Let him answer the question from an architectural perspective, meaning the architecture that's proposed in the plan is the proposed architecture in accord, I think was the question, with the 2040 plan.
So the building type and use is in accord with the comprehensive plan.
So tell us why.
So there's a whole section of the Plymouth.
Are you reading from notes?
I have notes, yeah.
Can I see those, please?
No, they're his notes.
They're my notes.
You can't.
He's allowed to read notes.
I
He's
have
not on a witness stand in court.
I actually have a quote here from can't remember the quote. I have to write it down.
He's allowed.
So there's a whole section.
I'd like to see the notes, though.
Of the 2040 comp plan, which was adopted in 2019. Quoting from page 129 from my notes, under the heading Zoning Provisions and Design Standards, page 129 of the comp plan. As the future of indoor shopping malls is still in question, it is important to consider allowing a range of uses on the mall site, including provisions for elderly housing and multifamily dwellings, so as not to constrain the market and allow the uses and building configurations on the site to continue to evolve. However, an overall shift towards more mixed use as redevelopment of traditional indoor shopping malls occurs, has been observed across the region and could be appropriate for Plymouth Meeting Mall, especially given the site's established transit access.
In your opinion, will the proposed apartment house impair an adequate supply of light and air to the adjacent properties?
No.
In your opinion, will the proposed apartment house be consistent with the surrounding zoning and use?
Yes.
Objection. He's not a planning expert. Again, from an architectural standpoint.
He's he's got a master's degree in urban design.
We'll allow it. We'll allow it. We'll allow it.
Yes.
In your opinion, will the proposed apartment adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare
Objection.
of the township?
Overruled.
No.
No further questions.
Cross-examined.
May I see his notes?
No, you may not.
I'm not going to make him. If you want to show him the notes, you
I
can.
prefer not to.
Oh, okay.
Look, his testimony is what it is. It's on the record. Whether he was reading from notes or not, I don't know how that bears on what his testimony was. The board heard his testimony, and
So I will read it. It's fine. No questions for this guy. Good.
no question. Board questions for Mr. Shapiro.
Sledich?
I'm not ready. I was waiting for a cross.
He knows it's 9:20, so.
No, well, the Sledge had questions before that we put off until you testified, so.
Right. So they're luxury apartments. Do you have a price range in mind?
So I'm not the developer, I'm not the sponsor, I'm only the designer. I can give you from our experience what a typical 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment in the marketplace is kind of getting today, and you can probably look this up. But my guess is a 1-bedroom here would be between $1,800 and $2,000, and a 2 would probably be, $2,800 to $3,500. That's what they're generally going. You're shaking your head. That's generally what they go for these days.
So part of the testimony was that the people who live in the apartments could work at the mall. So I'm wondering how they're going to be able to afford apartments like that if they're working at a sneaker store in the mall.
Well, it's assuming that the mall's use, the overall mall's use stays the same. I think a lot of malls are converting to, there's a opportunity for life sciences to come to the mall. Other office uses that have the wide open spaces that are inside malls. But also a manager, someone who's, say, the general manager of the Whole Foods, I think probably makes plenty to, I would think, considering what Whole Foods charges.
That's one person. I think that my questions come from, we're talking about people will be walking to work and there'll be more foot traffic. So I'm just trying to gain an understanding of that. That's all the questions I have right now.
All right, Mr. Daly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious how you propose to fit 300 apartments into 5 stories. I was just recently over Place One, in Germantown Pike, and they have 32 apartments per floor and 10 stories, and that's a massive structure. So I'm going to have.
So it is a massive structure, but it's actually just I think is that a single bar or is it an L?
Yeah, I'm not sure how you would characterize it, but basically, if the elevators open and then you have a corridor going down one, it's almost a T.
It's a T.
Corridor going down, and then there are 2 adjacent corridors. Each one has around.
Floor plan here.
Yeah, we do have. I thought we had the floor plan in here. So this is what we would call the building type that we're proposing here is something that's commonly called a Texas donut or Dallas donut. I like Dallas donut better, but people call it Texas.
Well,
so it's a series of wings that form a courtyard. So where that building may be a T or an L, this is actually a square, so it's 4 wings. And then it also wraps part of the garage. And then so when you start to stack that up, that's how you get to the number of units. Additionally, my guess is, and I'm not familiar with that building and the interior, but my guess is that building was built in the 70s.
I would guess so. It looks about that.
Or late 60s, and I'm guessing those units are pretty big.
Yeah.
They're different than what is sort of a contemporary, and I'm guessing there's probably 3-bedroom units in that building, and that they may be 2,000 square feet.
Yeah, I haven't been inside. I just know the number of doors.
So
Yeah.
I'm guessing. I don't really know for sure, but it's a different model.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pruitt, you allowed to talk about access to the mall traffic-wise or not? Is that somebody else?
I can speak to it a little bit as a land planner and urban designer. I mean, access is part of the work that we do, but we also have a traffic engineer who is much more in tune to the specific improvements.
Ask
But,
whatever you
yeah,
want, we'll see.
I'll say, if I can't answer
How
it,
many
I'll tell you.
accesses are there?
To the mall?
Yes.
So there's 2, 3, I think there's 3 or 4 along Germantown, and there's at least 2 along Hickory. I have to look it up on a plan for that. So we have the first one that comes right after the Loop Oil, that is a next to the right in.
That's just an in.
It's just an in. Then there's the main access where the sign is. There's a
Traffic
further
light.
right traffic light. There's a further. that
That's
might
just
be an out.
that's an in and a right out.
It's a right in and right out.
So 3 along Germantown.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's 3, and then there's the 2 along Hickory. One that's closer to where the buses come in and out, and the second one that's a little bit close further down.
I
towards
think
the bus
there's
stop.
3 along.
And then isn't there a third one?
Yeah.
It's just a
Is there a
right
third
out.
one further down?
There's a right out as you start.
There's 3 along. I'm looking at a
Yeah,
plan.
look at a plan. Yeah, no, there is a third. Looks like that's a left in, right out, further to the east along Hickory. So there's 3 along Germantown and 3 along Hickory.
So out of all of those access points, how many would be available to the new apartment? If the proposed apartment.
From a land planning and urban design perspective, I would want
Whatever you're allowed to
I
answer.
would want
Architectural perspective.
I would want as many of them as available, because the way to alleviate traffic concerns is not to concentrate, but to spread out. That's why the grid is actually the most efficient form of traffic there is.
What's the grid?
A grid system.
Which is
The way Center City Philadelphia is laid out.
Right.
Streets going this way and
Because
avenues
there's
going this
multiple
way.
opportunities to go other ways. Least efficient is what we see in the suburbs, where you have a single arterial and a series of cul-de-sacs, and then you wonder why that arterial gets backed up, because everybody has to use it. If you use a grid system, there's multiple ways of going places.
Okay.
So I would want to have as many access points as possible, so that no single one is overused.
Okay. And I guess you don't drive around here a lot, so you don't know how bad it could be on Germantown Pike.
I do know how bad it can be on Germantown Pike, and I drive here almost every day. Like I said, I work in Norristown. But again, it's about not concentrating.
You work in Norristown and you come from Marion Station?
Yep.
So why would you come up Germantown Pike?
Lunch,
Okay.
site visits.
The other question I have is it possible just to have a separated access just to this building?
Is it possible?
Yes.
I suppose it could be possible. From an urban design and land planning perspective, I wouldn't recommend it, but I'm not a
I
traffic
didn't
engineer.
ask you if you would recommend it. I asked if it was possible. It's really yes or no.
I would question how you would control that. I'm not sure how you could actually
It might
segregate
cost
that.
some money.
How that could be segregated.
Just cost some money.
There's
a lot of room on that side.
It's more than just money. I mean, I don't know how you prevent someone from using. I think you're referring to like using the Hickory Road and coming around on the backside.
Exactly.
I think from a convenience standpoint, I think a lot of people probably would do that, but I don't know how you disallow someone who's going to Boscov's from using that entrance.
Well, I'm sure there's ways. I just wondered if it was possible.
Anything's possible.
Okay. No questions.
How much did you look at King of Prussia's setup over there by Town Center? Is it going to be similar to that?
No, not remotely. The King of Prussia Town Center has 3,000 apartment units.
I mean, would it be like a slice of that? I mean, just from the eye, like from driving by there and checking that out, it looks similar.
So this building type, you are correct. Those are Dallas Donut or Texas Donut type buildings. So this would be like that. This building is of that and would compete with those buildings for residents. But we're not proposing, how many are there, 8?
There's 3,000.
Three-
Just
right.
shy of 3,000 units.
So it is that similar building type.
Okay.
But the interesting thing about this is one of the criticisms I have as a land planner and urban designer,
As an architect.
for that site. And I grew up in King of Prussia. Is that the uses are still pretty segregated over there. Like the residents are all on one side, and you have the Wegmans on the other side. Like if I lived there, I know that would I walk to that Wegmans? I don't know. It's a little far. It's not that convenient. This is right. I mean, you're right on top of the
So
Whole Foods.
to that point, is there a clear walking path to Whole Foods?
Oh yes, there's actually a little stair tower there.
You don't have to cross that street?
You would have to cross that street, sure.
You got to go through the traffic.
Well, there'd be a crosswalk, and I'm sure we can do things by controlling that crosswalk. One of those little push button things, and the lights flash.
What's in the courtyard?
So in that courtyard, where it's actually labeled here, that's where the swimming pool would be. There'd probably be bocce courts in there, or maybe some volleyball courts, some contemplative spaces, some grilling stations. I would encourage you to go, shop one of the apartment buildings in King of Prussia, and they'll take you through all the amenities, and they'll show you how.
So the amenities will be similar to King of Prussia?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Is there going to be like a gym, inside gym?
There'd be an inside
Is there
gym.
any retail over there?
There'd be no additional retail in this building. It's actually a tough location for retail, just from a visibility standpoint.
I mean, like for like coffee shop.
So a lot of these, they do have like little coffee stations for their residents who can come downstairs and grab a coffee before they, go off on their day. A lot of them do offer that. And a lot of states that are not Pennsylvania, sometimes they have little pubs. But this, they're
You
like,
could go over to Corman's Ave on Union Meeting Road.
Yep,
So
that's
it's-
another example.
It's bigger, but yeah, it's got all the bells and whistles that Seth's talking about.
How many units is that? How many units is Ave?
I did the land planning for that. We didn't do the architecture, but I did get the conditional use approval. I want to say it's 280 something. Does that sound right?
I think it's
So
more,
it might be
but
more.
it has an enormous amount of.
Yeah, Ave is-
it's got an enormous amount of amenity space. It's got like 30 or 35,000 square feet
So
of amenity space.
A good rule of thumb that we use when we lay these things out is 30 to 50 square feet of internal amenity space per unit. Now, that's a pretty big range. But at 50 square feet, that would be 15,000 square feet of amenity space. And that's just internal. I think, I forget the actual layout we did here. I think we're closer to 12 or 13,000 in the building that we're showing here.
How many parcels does this property consist of?
I think there's 9, but I think that all but the office building is owned by some, PR something or other. And Keystone owns the other one, I think, and then there's a series of leases and things like that.
So, I mean, this might be way out in front of our skis, but say the approval did get approved, would those parcels be sold to a developer, or is Preet going to develop these?
I think there's a confusion on the question. The chair asked how many parcels this subject property is.
Right.
This subject property that they want to build apartments on is one tax parcel.
It's one parcel.
When there was a reference earlier to 9 tax parcels, something like that, that meant the whole mall prospect. This is one
that's
tax parcel.
used for overall parking, overall impervious coverage. No, this is
one
This is
parcel.
one parcel.
So would that be sold off to developers? Or
It probably would be sold to a sophisticated apartment developer.
So Preet wouldn't manage it all out to the end.
Preet's in the mall business.
Retail business.
Yeah, but Preet very much wants it to be there to bring the people.
All right, no further questions.
You know,
Thank you very much.
we talked about that at great
Yeah,
length.
no, I get it. I just wanted to know how, where that dividing line lied. All right, very good. Thank you.
Any other redirect based on questions? I don't know. Give these guys a chance to recross or cross initially if you wish. Based on the questions that were asked.
I just have one Question. Mr. Shapiro, you said you were involved in the, you made a comparison to the Ave development in Whitpain. You were involved in the planning of that?
Yes.
It is true that that development is not apartments, though, correct?
It's extended stay
Corporate
apartments.
rental suites?
And some of them are furnished, I believe, not all of them.
No, some of them are rented.
They're
both.
They're not apartments. They're corporate rental suites, correct? You said extended stay. Furnished extended stay.
I don't believe
I
that's
think
accurate.
the only meaningful
I can tell you it is one.
only meaningful difference, and again, I think the only meaningful difference is that the lease lengths of time can be shorter. In general, these are going to be 1 year, 2 year, 3 year leases. At AB, I think they do it on a monthly or even sometimes weekly basis because of that sort of market that they're addressing, but they also do yearly.
Thank you.
Okay.
What are you looking at, David, for another hearing?
Oh, yeah, we need to talk about that. Let's go off the record and talk about that. This board's regular meeting in June is June 19th.
That's no good for me. I'm coming back, and then I have a hearing the 20th and 21st.
We're going to need to have room availability.
Yeah, I'll check in the morning.
I'm sorry, what are we looking at?
Next meeting.
No, I understand. What date?
We need to continue this to a date certain. The 19th is no good. That's the normal meeting night for this board.
Yeah, I'll have to check in the morning for room availability.
I don't know if the...
Do we have a guess on how many meetings we're going to need?
Well, I've got 2 more witnesses, both of whom you...
So, I mean, like 4 more months?
No. The 2 more witnesses can be done at one
that's
meeting
sure.
direct
And then I have a few witnesses, so.
And you have a couple witnesses, that's another meeting, that's a third meeting.
Probably 4 more meetings.
We're gonna need
Yeah.
4, we're gonna need, well.
3 more meetings.
3 more meetings.
At least.
Yeah, and then we're gonna continue it to get proposed findings of fact and such, and,
One a month or more than
Dave, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
If we have an issue with room availability and also calendars, could I suggest that we just, unless you're planning on doing this before the scheduled June meeting, we could continue to the June
To the
meeting
June
and then
meeting.
continue it again to a different day that works for everybody.
right, and
Yeah, but
I've
let's
seen
try
that
and,
done.
let's see if we can...
I just didn't
If
know
we can
Joel
pick
could
that
give us
tonight
some-
while we're all sitting here, that would be awesome.
Right. It's the
Um,
room issue.
yeah,
Since we won't be back in the township building for a while.
I see what you're saying. We don't know what the room, when's the township building reopening?
Next year in October.
October, all right, we're not
That's what
there
they
yet.
said.
With fingers crossed.
Yeah, which means
They're saying
October
January.
24th.
It's like
Um,
2024.
I don't know how the zoning hearing board feels. We're going to be here on June 19th. This June, you're not good June 20th, Mark?
20 and 21st.
Okay.
I would rather go to that next week if you don't mind.
26th.
That's not good for me. I'm away.
This is going to be fun.
You're away the week of the 26th?
Yeah, I'll be in the mountains of New Mexico with my Boy Scout troop.
Nice. Atta guy.
Philmont, that's right.
Atta guy.
Blissfully
You don't want
unavailable.
to Zoom?
Blissfully unavailable. Like,
Blissfully.
my
Not
cell
even
phone
bringing
will be
his cell phone.
Camp Petty.
Guaranteed there's not even cell phone service.
I know there's
When are you away till?
So June 24th we leave and we get back on July 8th.
Oh, wow. 2 full weeks.
In the wilderness.
In the wilderness.
No cell phone service.
July,
That's 2 weeks
July,
of your life.
yeah.
Tell me what it's like.
Very interesting.
July 10th works.
I'm going to London and Paris.
Well,
That's Plymouth regular.
either we're looking at the week of July
You're in
10th, or
Pardon?
You're in all.
could we, I mean, how about the week of June before the 19th?
I'm going the 9th.
Oh, you're going the 9th, all right. So
Yeah,
that,
we-
June's not going to work. July, it looks like week of July 10th.
What if you went to June 5th, though?
That's council work session. It's June 5th. So that, I don't know if we can have 2 rooms, but.
I'm attending a conference. I think I'll be in California.
Is Marty recused or just?
No, Marty just couldn't make it
Couldn't make it
tonight.
tonight. All right, so he'll make the next one or whatever.
Yeah, he'll read the transcript
Okay.
and
All right. I didn't know if he was.
he'll get it. He'll get.
Can we do
swing of
video?
things.
Or
What's that?
no? Can we do video? Would that make it easier?
No,
for
that would make it
schedules?
much harder.
No.
Significantly harder than this.
So we were to July,
July 10th?
10th. Now, the 10th, I can't do it. The 11th, I could probably get someone to cover another meeting. How about Tuesday, the 11th, or Thursday, the 13th?
That's a good week for me.
I have a hearing on the 11th, 13th would be fine.
I mean, I'm out of town the 13th at a school law conference. I mean, we can talk, I guess.
We're in July now?
Yeah.
The 13th on a Thursday?
July 13th?
That's a wild one. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sundays.
But what? Yeah, I mean, it's a school law conference. That I have to be at State College, 13th and 14th. I mean, what do you say? The 11th? I mean, I have another zone.
I have a hearing on the 11th.
I can't do the 10th or 12th.
17th.
Correct, 17th of July.
We're in July.
Next year.
How many of us have to be here to make a quorum?
Three. I mean,
So why don't
you
you guys-
should all try to be here. Otherwise, you're going to
Right.
have to start reading transcripts. And
But I mean, it sounds like you guys are really super busy. So why don't you guys block out a calendar date and give us the options, and at least 3 of us can make it. You know what I mean?
I would do the 17th.
well, July 17th is their normal meeting in July now.
How many do we have? Do we know?
We don't know. We're not going to know
We're not
until
gonna double
for a
up.
while until
I mean,
we know what's in
you wanna
July.
give them an hour
push
that
them all
night, or
off
is it
till-
an
I
hour?
have
3 for June, so, and they're all residential.
So what? Can we give them an hour after those 3, or no?
They're not available.
For either
June
regular
June
meeting?
June 19th is our regular meeting, and not everybody's available. So we're at July 17th, which is their July regular meeting. We don't know how many other applications there's going to be. You may have to wait for some, but we'll get it as much as we can.
I'm super boring, so I'm available.
Amy, July 17th?
Let me know what you figure out.
I mean, as of now, when my boss says get on a plane, I have to get on a plane.
I hear you.
But as of right now, I'm available.
We all understand that.
Three of
Far
us
in
are-
advance, so
Yeah.
it's hard
The important
to.
thing is to get everything on the record. And then,
July 17th?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's fine.
No.
Sure. Where are we?
July 17th.
So
All right.
we're going to have a hearing? 2 months?
Let's go back on the record, please. Do I have a motion from the zoning hearing board to continue this matter to Monday, July 17th, 2023, based upon a discussion with council and the zoning hearing board off the record, determining that that is an acceptable date that everybody can attend?
I'll make that motion, Senator.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second?
Dom.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are continued to July 17th at 7 p.m. at the Greater Plymouth Community Center.
All right, thank you.
Bring pictures of it.